Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the BYU Technology Transfer Podcast. Today we have Kelvyn Cullimore with us. He is the president and CEO of BioUtah. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kelvyn. We're really excited to have you here.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here and talk a bit about the life sciences industry.
Fantastic. Well, Kelvyn, would you mind maybe introducing yourself a little bit, giving us a little bit of your background and history, how you came to become the president of BioUtah? And then could you tell us a little bit more about BioUtah and its core mission in supporting Utah's life sciences community?
Sure, happy to do that. I'll start with the most important element, which is I am a BYU grad.
Fantastic. We like to hear that.
I attended the Y. I was actually a student body officer at BYU, so my blood runs blue. But my professional background, I was CEO of a publicly traded medical device company named Dynatronics, located here in Utah, a company that was started by myself and my father. And I did that for a couple of decades, a little bit more than that. And during that period of time, I also served on the National Board of the Medical Device Manufacturers Association in Washington, D.C. So I did a lot of advocacy work for the industry at that point in time through that association. MDMA was a national trade association. I had the opportunity of starting a city as well as a medical device company. I was the first mayor of Cottonwood Heights, a suburb of Salt Lake City. So we got to have that opportunity. I did that concurrently with serving as CEO of my company. And that gave me a lot of insight into the political arena at the state level and local level. In 2018, I had stepped away from my company. We brought in some private equity, did some expansion of the company. And as often happens when you bring in private equity, I was not there for a long time after that. And then I stepped away from being mayor at about the same time and was looking for something to do that did not require quarterly earnings reports or doing something along the lines of working with analysts. So
Right.
they were looking for somebody to head up the local trade association called BioUtah. And I had been part of BioUtah for decades. I loved the organization. And so I decided that I would step up and put my name in, and they all thought that would be a good idea. And so I've been doing this now for about 5.5 years, and it's a kind of a job made for me with my background in life sciences and the political advocacy arena. So that's a little bit about me. BioUtah itself is a traditional trade association. For those who are familiar, we're a 501c6, which means that we are a nonprofit but have the added element of doing advocacy work.
Okay.
And so we do a lot of advocacy. We work very closely on behalf of the industry with our federal delegation back in Washington, D.C., making sure that laws and policies and agencies are doing things that are beneficial to the industry and not injurious to the industry. Do the same thing at the local level. We work closely with the state legislature and the state agencies to advance the cause of life sciences in the state of Utah. We do events. We do a lot of networking. We do capital formation. We do academic. We do a lot of work with our academic institutions like BYU, and do everything we can to socialize the elements of life science among all of the constituencies in the state.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that overview. And you mentioned networking, and specifically with networking, how important do you feel that is to the life sciences sector?
Well, as with any industry, networking is very important for many reasons. I would like to think that people come to our events because we put on really good events and the content is worth coming to hear and things. But every survey we ever do says that the number one reason why people come to our events or participate in our activities is networking. They love to network, get to know the people in the industry, and that works out great. It's not only good for finding good jobs and companies, but it's also good for collaborations between companies. It's good for collaboration between academia and industry. It's good for collaborations between government and industry. It's just really a good opportunity to bring together common elements and get a better outcome because of that network.
Yeah, absolutely. And when individuals in life sciences are looking to get started with networking, I mean, personally, I think I see it as being critical, right? There's only so much you can do on your own. If you're connected with the right people, can find those collaborations, obviously you're going to be able to do more than you would otherwise. What would be your recommendations for getting started? Are there any particular events or strategies that you would employ?
Yeah, obviously, networking requires putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
I hear sometimes from people that, well, there's not much collaboration, there's not much going on, and I'll say, well, what events have you attended? Who have you
Hmm.
interacted with? And they'll admit that they really haven't done any of that. And
Right.
so part of it, and I understand this because especially when you're an early stage company, you kind of got your head down, just focusing on making ends meet and achieving your scientific and regulatory goals and all of that. But it's important to lift your head up just enough to look around and see what's going on in the industry, take advantage of industry gatherings to come and meet people. It's amazing what happens when you actually show up, the
Yeah.
people that you meet and the things that you learn. If you just stay insulated within your own company and just stay in your own office and you don't interact outside of that, then you are limited in your opportunities. So my advice is, find ways to get engaged. With BioUtah, obviously would love to have companies be members of BioUtah, but
Hmm.
we allow anybody to come to our events, whether they're a member or not. And so there's really no reason not to come
Right.
and, and participate in those kinds of activities and other kinds of activities that are offered either through academic institutions
Hmm.
or other industry associations. There are plenty of opportunities to come and get acquainted with people. So, and probably the most important thing they could do is sign up for our newsletter to find out what all those things are.
Yes. Yeah. And being signed up to many different newsletters, I believe I'm signed up to yours as well. It can be, I don't know, a little annoying sometimes getting all of those notifications, especially if you're signed up to a lot of them. But it's truly important because if you don't know what's going on, you don't know where the next event is or who's going to be there or who's hosting it or what the purpose of it is, you miss out on opportunities to make those connections that are going to push you forward. So, no, I like that recommendation.
Yeah.
Nice. And is there anything, you mentioned the number one feedback that you get from your events is that the networking is spectacular, or that they're there to network. Is there anything that BioUtah does differently from other organizations that you feel like facilitates that really well?
I don't know that there is, to be
Okay.
honest. I think what we
I
do
like
try
that,
and
an
do,
honest answer.
I think we try to create the environment where networking can happen easily. We always joke that we have the main event going on in the ballroom, and there's a good attendance in the ballroom listening to the speakers or the panel or whatever is going on. But the
Mhm.
minute somebody opens the door, it's like, there's crowds of people out there and the noise is overwhelming and you have to shut the door. There's as
Right.
much going on out in the exhibit areas and the hallways and making sure that those kinds of things are there. One thing we do try and do that maybe not so unique, but we try and make time for networking. So for instance, early on we would do a lunch, uh, a sit down lunch, and you could network with two or three people at your table. We found that wasn't effective, and so what
Mhm.
we started doing was a box lunch and just giving people a networking lunch that they can simply go and sit down by whoever they want. They could talk for a while, they get up, go somewhere else, and really mingle during that period of time. We've also tried to do some events. We introduced a mixer in advance of the event this year. It had over 100 people come. So there are different things that we try and do that cater specifically to networking.
Fantastic. No, I like that. And I think that when the purpose is networking, sometimes the lunch or whatever is going on, you can get caught up in that a little bit as an attendee, right? But really, if you go in with the right mindset, the idea is to go there, meet new people, make those connections, move your business and your efforts forward. And you've already touched on this a little bit, but specifically with startups, Do you see networking as being critical? Do you see it as being able to help them accelerate their progress towards, becoming a more fully fledged and rounded company?
Yeah, I do. And probably the early stage startup companies are the most in need of the networking because
Right.
they don't know what they don't know. And attending events and talking to people who have been there and done that can save them a lot of grief, a lot of errors, a lot of mistakes, and 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 you might make connections of people that will either mentor you, invest in you, or give you advice that could be very critical to your ultimate success. So, yeah, I think sometimes people feel intimidated by networking events, especially in early stage companies. Somebody who kind of feels like, hey, I haven't really paid my dues yet. If I go
Hmm.
there, I'm kind of a nobody. You know, everybody is somebody in this industry, and so and I find that people in this industry are very willing to share. They're very willing to collaborate, and so you should never feel that you don't fit in. You should always come, do your best. Different personalities will handle it in different ways,
Yes.
but really, you got to be present to win.
Yes, absolutely. And I know with some of our technical founders of companies that networking in these types of events, they kind of feel like a fish out of water sometimes. But I think you said it correctly there that if you get there and you make the effort, you're going to get something out of it, right? You're going to, even if it's not perfect, right? You're going to get in front of people, you're going to, pitch your company ideas. Like you're going to be in the place that you need to be to start gaining traction, right? Because you might have the technical expertise, but making those connections is only going to help you long term.
Yeah, and there's so many people who have already been down the path that early stage
Hmm.
uh, entrepreneurs are embarking on. I mean, you could learn so much from people who have already been there and done that. It is almost a crime not to come and take advantage of the people who can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. Well, maybe shifting gears a little bit here, what kind of trends do you see in the life science industry, maybe specifically in Utah, and then on a national level, if you're seeing anything as well?
Yeah, it's we are a heavily regulated industry, and
Hmm.
so a lot of the trends get driven by policy and other kinds of things. But what we are seeing is some significant trends. Obviously, artificial intelligence, machine learning techniques are changing the way things are done. Um,
Hmm.
I was talking to the people at Becton Dickinson, a big medical device manufacturer here in Utah, and they, I said, you've got your devices now are all communication devices.
Hmm.
They didn't used to do that. They said, yeah, 12 years ago, we didn't have any software engineers in the building. Now we have a bunch. And so there's a lot moving towards AI, ML, that kind of stuff. We're seeing accelerated development in the drug arena to try and bring drugs to market more quickly. Uh, the big challenge we have with all of it is that we're regulated by an agency, FDA, that's operating on 1970s and 1980s type of regulatory mechanisms.
All right.
And they're having a hard time adapting. The science is running so far ahead of the regulatory expertise that it becomes quite problematic. And so
Yeah.
so that's going to be a challenge, but we're seeing significant increases in the acceleration of processes and with artificial intelligence and machine learning and those kinds of things, just amazing technologies now that weren't even thought of even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that we're seeing is that a lot of that is happening here in Utah.
Hmm.
We're seeing a lot with the genomics work and gene therapy. We're seeing drugs come out that actually cure disease. I mean, several years back, hepatitis C, they came out with a drug that cures it. I mean, absolutely cures hepatitis C. Nobody ever thought that would happen. Now we've got drugs that are coming out that are curing sickle cell anemia and other kinds of things. And so we're seeing some real significant advances in the pharmaceutical side. Um, One of the challenges we're facing, though, is a trend that is anti-pharma, and that's
Mm,
really unfortunate. There's this concept that big pharma is bad, and that's unfortunate because when the pandemic came, who did everybody turn to? They
right.
turned to pharma to solve the problem, which they did.
Hmm.
Um, and so, while it's not perfect, and there are certainly ways to make it better, right now, some of the policies coming out of Washington D.C. are very anti-pharma, and the thing I worry about is if those kind of policies persist, we'll lose our leadership position in drug development. It'll start to go to other countries, and so that's a negative concern. But
Right.
yet, we are so entrepreneurial in this country.
Hmm.
I'm sure we'll figure out a way around it. So. But I would like to comment on the fact that Utah itself is one of the, most people may not be aware that we are one of the fastest growing life science hubs in the country.
Hmm.
McKinsey Gardner Institute report just published last November showed that only 2 states are growing faster than Utah. And only 2 states have a higher density of life science employees than does Utah. So and investment per capita in life sciences, we rated number 8.
Right.
So there is significant activity in the life science arena. We just had a ribbon cutting today for a diagnostic company that's got 100 employees and plans to hire another 400 in the next few years. And we've got Stryker, who is continuing to grow, and Edwards, who's getting ready to put up new. So I mean, it's just the industry is continuing to expand. And then we have all these new technologies, early stage technologies that
Hmm.
are showing great promise. So,
Yes.
we're very fortunate here in Utah, and we've actually got companies looking at moving here because of the environment.
Right. And I think the environment is key to success, obviously. But what advice would you have for somebody who's looking to get started in the life sciences? You mentioned kind of the highly regulated environment, but there's a lot of growth and a lot of opportunities in Utah specifically. Maybe what advice would you give somebody who's looking to get in, but they don't really know where to get started?
Well, number one, what other industry can you be in where you can make a good living helping people live better lives or
Right.
saving lives? I mean, that's kind of the zenith of of a job, is you can do a job that you get paid for, but in the process, you're relieving pain, suffering, and saving lives. I mean,
Hmm.
that's incredible. So, number one, if you have a great idea, pursue it. But the first thing you've got to do is you've got to figure out how to validate your idea to make it investable. And that early stage stuff can be painful, trying to work through it and
Hmm.
talking to key opinion leaders, taking a lot of input, getting your idea put together. A lot of early stage financing comes from entrepreneurs themselves who mortgage their homes. They go to family,
Right.
friends. I mean, anybody they can talk to who will believe in them to put money in to get it going. We fortunately have some new sources of early stage funding in the state now. So there's opportunities to get early stage money and to get help with things like an SBIR grant or an
Yes.
STTR grant. There are lots of ways to get early stage money. So my advice is, if you think you've got a good idea, talk around, make sure that you vet it and that others confirm that you have a good idea, and then figure out how much you can get done without having to raise capital.
Hmm.
Next thing is to go after the non-dilutive capital like an SBIR grant or other kinds of grants that might be available out there. Right now, BioUtah was one of the biggest employers in life sciences in Utah right now. Started out in the 90s and
Hmm.
had one SBIR grant after another to get their company started.
Right.
You know, Today they employ over 4,000 people. So, we've got to get that done is important to get it to a place where you can get other investors to look at it. Then it's just the process of doing your testing, your clinical trials, proving your concept, validating it, and then making it available for investment so that you can go through the regulatory phase and you can go through the commercialization phase. It's tough. It's tough. There's
Right.
no question. I mean, it's you end up with having many hurdles to cross in this industry. It's not a matter of coming up with a good idea. The next month you're selling your product.
Yeah.
So that's the big challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And with BioUtah, have you seen any kind of success stories, either with early startup companies coming to events and being connected with the right people, and that really being maybe the key factor in accelerating their growth?
Yeah. For instance, I've got one company right now. I mean, the guy called me and said, "Hey, I met this guy at the ENI summit that we just held, and tell me about him." And he realized that this guy is really interested in investing in this company, and most of the investors that came found companies they were interested in talking to. This guy could actually, this one investor that he found could literally fund his whole company to the point of commercialization. So
Right.
it's really again, you have to show up to win, have to be present to win.
Yeah.
If the investors are going to be there, you got to be there to talk to them. But yes, we've seen last year we did a survey, and 70% of the people responding to the survey said that they either found an investor to talk that was interested in their concept, or investors said they found a company they were interested in talking to. Only 30% said they did not find a match. And
Wow,
so
that is impressive. 70%. That
yeah,
is fantastic.
they don't all work out, but
Oh, right,
as
right.
most people know, you gotta knock on 100 doors to find one investor who shares your vision.
Yes. And sometimes as a founder, like you don't know where those doors are to knock, right? You've spent so much time validating maybe the market or the technical feasibility of your idea. And now you're like, okay, great, everything's lining up. Now what? Right. And so
Yeah,
I think these
exactly.
events, getting connected with those people, getting connected with investors, even if it's just a potential, right? It's one more door that you've knocked, it's one more opportunity to continue taking those next steps. So that's fantastic. Okay. Well, maybe one last question for you. Looking
Okay.
ahead, what is your vision for the Utah's life science community, and what role do you see BioUtah playing in that?
Well, we will continue to advance and be the voice of the industry, and doing all we can to bring attention, like from investors, academic, and facilitating partnerships between academic institutions and companies, healthcare delivery networks and companies, government and companies. We will continue to do all those kinds of things and try and ramp up our events so they're even more successful, attract more
Hmm.
people along those lines. That is what we intend to do, which is easy to do when you have the momentum that we do in Utah of growing the industry.
Right.
We have a lot of things happening, both on the we're primarily a device state. Most of our jobs are in medical devices,
Hmm.
but pharmaceutical development is a very rapidly growing segment in the state. And so we're seeing that become a big factor as well. So I firmly believe that Utah will continue to see growth. I think we'll continue to be a top five kind of a company, kind of a state for development of life science companies in the country. And we're seeing that now coming from all sorts of institutions outside of the state who are saying, wow, what is happening in Utah?
Hmm.
And why Utah? And then they come here and they see what's going on with our companies, with our academic institutions, and then they understand the quality of life that we have here, and they don't ever want to go back. We've got a big group up in Park City of people who are affiliated with the industry or the investment side of the industry, and they don't have any operations in the state of Utah, but they
Hmm.
are very bullish on what's happening in Utah and supporting it. And so
Yeah.
so it's we are on the map, and I think we're going to see it continue to grow.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kelvin, for taking part in the podcast today and for all those wonderful insights. For anybody who wants to get a hold of you, obviously you can reach out to us here at the BYU Tech Transfer Office and we can connect you. If they want to reach out directly, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Best way is just to go on our website, bioutah.org. All of our email addresses and contact information is on there. But I'm happy to, and it's easy to remember. It's just kelvyn@bioutah.org. So
Perfect.
happy to have people reach out and help them achieve their goals in the life sciences as well. That's what we're about.
Fantastic. Yeah. And we very similarly here at BYU Tech Transfer, we're looking to help people get started in life sciences as well as other industries. So if anybody has any questions or wants to come in, talk about SBIR funding, find out more about, events that we're putting on here or BioUtah, again, please don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you again, Kelvyn. Really fantastic talking with you.
Ben, it's been my pleasure.